Hey guys, I'm Jackie Brubaker. I'm an author, a motivational and career coach, and host of That Girl the Podcast. Each week, I bring on a leader in their field to talk about how to stop making excuses and how you can start living your lifelong dream. That Girl the Podcast is based on That Girl the Novel, which is on Amazon to download or buy the paperback of. You can also follow us on Instagram at That Girl the Podcast and our Patreon page. I'm here with Megan Garcia. She is a host of Orange Couch Therapy. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I think people always do a better job at it. And we are also new friends. So I don't know that much about you.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited about this. So I'm Megan. I am the creator, as you said, of Orange Couch Therapy. What's behind the name is my passionate love for the TV series involving 6 friends that go to Central Park. And and of course we have, as I'm a mental health therapist too, I guess I should have said that too. So obviously in my office, I've got my couch for my clients. I've got the chairs. So I put the two and two together and here I am.
And how did you know you wanted to be in mental health?
That came probably about a good 10 years ago. So long story short, my husband is a veteran, and we, through our own struggles, with being separated for, like while he was deployed and stuff, I was like, what really got me was the lack of support that they got as soldiers and who are fighting for us and stuff. And I'm like, I need to be a part of changing some stuff. And, I kind of thought about, what are my natural gifts though? Like, how can I enter into this? How can I be of support? And I came up with counseling. I'm like, well, I love to talk. I love connecting with people. Well, why not do it? Yeah. So I started that endeavor probably about, a little over 10 years ago. And so here I am.
I love it. Well, I do love me any kind of psychologist. I went back to school so many different times to become one, and it led me to life coaching, which was not even on my radar. So
That's amazing.
It's very interesting how the universe will direct you into the right field. When I think about how could I best be serving people, I still think coaching is actually the best way so far. And maybe that can change.
That's amazing. Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah. So I have a lot of respect for what you do is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And likewise, I've looked at your content and stuff and just what you've got going on. And it's just so we need people like you too, just to have that energy and to be so supportive and stuff. It's really awesome.
Thank you. Well, speaking of content, one of the first things I watched on your Instagram, which is at Orange Couch Therapy, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just putting that out there.
Thank you.
Of course. Yes, please. Is a video that you did on Grieving 2020. And I was so moved by that because that's something that I had been talking about too, not outwardly, but to friends and family. I was like, I feel like I'm going through grief. And so many things changed. I lost a career. I lost my job. I mean, the whole thing just completely changed. And, I think in the beginning we were all like, oh, this will be temporary, maybe like a couple of weeks. And then we're like, maybe a couple of months. And now we're like into the next year. And it's been almost a year of this. And so you talked about grief, and let's just talk about the stages of grief for people who don't remember what they are or who don't actually know what the stages of grief are. So I'll let you take that.
Okay, so the 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then at the end of it, acceptance. But here's the tricky thing is it doesn't always go in that order, so you can't just go, okay, well, I'm in this stage, so that means I should be getting into this stage pretty soon. And that's another thing too, is that there's no time limit for each stage. It just kind of has to happen.
Yeah, some people stay stuck in one stage of it for a really long time. I feel like sadness and anger are the most common that people stay stuck, where anger feels so good because you're powerful, and that can be so motivating to heal. But if you don't take the other necessary steps to heal, you're just stuck in anger and bitterness, and you're just basically kind of in victimhood too, which is not good.
Absolutely.
Just not a
Oh,
good place.
totally. I think because, I mean, depending on the situation, it's just like, I'm just going to take, for example, if we lose a loved one through death, right? And let's just say it's it was natural causes or something. And so there, I think we're always like in this mind frame of like, who is responsible? And when there's nothing really or anybody responsible for what happened, it can be easy to stay in that anger stage where you're just like, well, somebody's got to pay for it. So I'm going to be angry for now. and,
Yeah.
and if it's the universe, then that's what it is,
Right. Right. And then that can lead to other things, especially if you do blame God or the universe, or just circumstance. It's like, you can't really talk to them. You can't really
Right.
get any verbal thing back to help soothe that. And you kind of just stay stuck, like we said.
Yeah.
And then sadness. I know I've definitely been stuck in sadness before. And also, grief isn't just death. I think people get confused by the word grief too. We kind of just naturally assume, oh, this is someone died. And grief is absolutely not that. Grief is what we'll get into more in the podcast. But sadness is so common to get stuck in as well. And I actually think that you can become a little bit of a victim in sadness as well. So sadness and anger seem very similar to me, just different levels of energy. Whereas anger might be fueled by major, upward motion energy, and then sadness is malaise and depression and all of that. And it's tough too, because I know when I've been in the sadness zone, and it's just like, you want to get to the next stage or even go backwards, like even go back to anger or something, just to get out of it. And that's, I think, why people stay stuck in depression, just a depression for so long, is that they're just stuck in this sadness and they just can't even find a way to move forward.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right too. There can, from those stages of grief or just grief in general, that victim, having that victimism, is that even a word, victimism? If it's not, we made it up.
I like it.
So just having that mentality, because as we're talking about it, I think it has a lot to do with going, well, who's responsible? Until then, I'm a victim. And, when it's just, it's hard to get out of that.
Right. Let's touch on the other stages as well. And I want to talk about the responsibility and who's responsible aspect in just a second. So the first one is denial, which is, I'm going to put denial/shock. Same kind of idea. You're just like, wait, what? And instant, like, that can't happen. That can't be true. Like this is too much. Like, nothing's that serious, but maybe it is, like the pandemic is a huge shock to all of us. We really were not prepared in any way.
At least from my perspective, I think our denial in the beginning is so, I think as anybody does, I remember this so fresh. It's so fresh in my head when we first started. And I remember initially hearing it on the news. Oh, there's a virus. It's starting in this location of the world. And I'm like, yeah, we're cool.
Right. Yeah.
We got this. It's fine. We hear about this stuff all the time, whatever. And then mid-March comes and they're like, well, we're closing everything down or whatever it was. But I know at least I have 3 kids. And so our schools were like, we're going to be closed for the week. Oh, wow. We got this.
Yeah.
And I think at that moment, I think back to that and I'm just like, whew. Yeah, we were in a stage of denial. We're like, no, it's fine. It'll be fine. No, that can't happen. It can't be more than a week.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think I was in a stage of denial until September. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
So before I became a coach, I was a TV producer.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So amazing. I was set to fly out to go work on a big show in March. And I was like, well, great. This will be fun. And then I will never forget getting an email from production and they're like, yeah, so we're going to push it 2 weeks. Just, see what this is all about. But probably no more than 2 weeks. I just remember thinking, oh, okay. And then months just started going by. And then it was like September, I was going to fly out. And because it was at such a height at that point,
Yeah.
I just was bumped off. They just needed as few people. And my type of producing
Wow.
wasn't as crucial as other producers. Like I worked for the network. So it was kind of a luxury for me to be there.
Wow.
But I'm like, okay. And then that's when the denial finally stopped. And I was like, oh my God, wait,
Yeah.
when am I going to work again? And
Yeah.
obviously we can see what's happened to the entertainment industry. Like some stuff's up and some stuff isn't. And it's just a
Right.
totally different animal. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
denial can last for a minute.
Oh yeah,
Last for a minute.
absolutely. Wow, what an experience. I'm learning this as we're, obviously
Yeah.
we're getting to know each other. That's amazing. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That
But,
is,
the thing that I think for so many people, it's so nice to be like, well, at least it wasn't just me. Like, we are so in
mm,
this together. And it's
yeah,
really nice to think, like, I'm not the only one who's experiencing so many of these things on different levels financially, emotionally, just what's the future looking like. And in
right.
my case, I'm really grateful that I actually went into coaching because it was something that was so destined anyway. And I was already on that path. So it worked
Yeah,
out really nicely because sometimes, and this is something positive about grief, is that sometimes it really can just open you up to a life that you would never have thought about, or maybe
yeah,
thought about, but never would have done. So,
right. I truly believe that. I truly believe that there's, in every storm, I mean, comes something pretty amazing. I tend to be more of an optimist, and maybe some people have a hard time with that mentality, but I do. I'm just like, okay, there's a reason. There's a reason for all of this for some reason. And I got, it really did force forced us to calm down. I think
oh, yes.
we're such a fast paced world, and it's just constantly go, go, go. And everything is at our fingertips and we get it in a matter of seconds. And this just really like made us take a step back and actually listen to our thoughts a little bit, listen to our feelings a little bit, I guess, and get a little bit
Right.
uncomfortable, maybe a lot uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and figure things out.
So, okay. So you are handling kids at home, work,
Yeah.
marriage, and then just whatever's left over from that.
Yeah.
Do you know what stage of grief you're in right now?
I think I've been in acceptance for a little bit. It'll kind of creep up where it gets back into maybe the angry stages when I kind of come to the realization of what we're limited with right now in terms of because I'm very like, let's do this, let's do that, and we're pretty limited because lots of things are closed or whatever.
Yeah.
So I bounce between either of those. But I would say at this moment, it's more acceptance because I just kind of was like, you know what? It's just doing me more harm than good to try to have control over this.
Right.
Not, and control where, I mean, obviously I guess I've learned where I can have control, and then just letting go of the rest has just kind of been, helpful in the whole situation.
Where do you feel that you have control?
In my home.
Mm-hmm.
In my home for sure. Where, how often are we going out, like for groceries or something like that? What kind of control do I have at work? How can I protect myself? I think it kind of boils down to like, how can I protect me and my family at this point? Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I have control over. Mm-hmm. And even still, and also, because we actually, little self-disclosure, my husband and I did contract COVID back in November. And I think letting go of control of the idea, like, are we going to get it? Are we not? Are we?
Yeah.
It's just this constant chase, it felt like. And so I've kind of let go of control of that and just kind of put it in the hands of God. And I'm just like, look, my prayers, you know my requests, and I'm just going to trust you from here on out, and just kind of letting control of that. So, yeah.
I'm so glad that you're both better.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's go back to talking about taking responsibility, and people, when we want to blame something and there isn't really anything to blame, what would you suggest for people to do to help calm that? Because that is a spinning kind of situation. You can just spin forever on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things come up. Naturally, I'm going to go see your therapist.
Yes, exactly. See your therapist, see your coach, see us.
Exactly. See your coach. Absolutely. But so I think right, because the whole thing is we need to sometimes to have that closure as we have to place blame somewhere.
Right.
So does it necessarily have to be a person? No, we can, kind of place that energy at least somewhere. So a lot of times, I will even suggest, write a letter to it, whatever it is. If it's the experience of losing somebody in death, do you want to write a letter to the pandemic? Let's write it. Let's write it out. Let's use, if you're a fan of profanity, use profanity and whatever
Totally.
you need to be,
Yeah.
to be completely, just let it out. And just write it out. I've suggested to clients and said, what do you want to do with this letter? Do you want to take it here to the office? Do you want to tear it up and just get rid of it and then dump it in the garbage? Do you want to do something like that where it's just where you're doing an actual act of getting rid of?
Burn
it.
I love
exactly.
burning letters.
Yes.
My favorite thing.
Exactly. So, but I think even just finding a person that you can be 100% vulnerable with and just going, look, can I just have your ears? I don't need a response. You don't even have to really take in what I'm giving you, but just give me the eye contact and let me know that you're listening so I can just unload this. I think it's just really the unloading it and getting rid of it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I so agree. I've been dealing with some closure right now too. I have thoughts about closure. Sometimes I feel like closure is one of those things that you just kind of never get, right? It's just like, well, maybe that person's toxic and it's not even worth trying to talk to them because they're just, a toxic type of a person. You're not really going to get an answer. So it's not worth it. And you have to kind of just deal with it. Or, sometimes you can talk to them and maybe get some answers. Maybe that they'll help, maybe they won't. It's interesting because the older I've gotten, the more I've just been like, I don't think I need like an answer so much with certain people anymore. It's just like, well, the actions were enough, the actions were enough. And we all were not quite ourselves last year, but we still had the ability to be a better version of us, even going through trauma. Like we might not be 100% all the time, but at least like show up. This actually leads us to, we do need to discuss bargaining, but it leads us to acceptance, which is sometimes you just kind of come through the entire stage of grief, all the stages of grief, and you just want to accept what happened. And maybe that doesn't mean you get all the answers. I think, with everything that everyone's processing, sometimes you can't send a text to the universe and be like, why? Why pandemic? Why? Yeah. I just want an answer. Sometimes you just don't get those answers. And so, I always think it's best to wait till you get to a place where you can actually be in a state of love and gratitude, someone who even hurt you, and just be like, even if you never send it and you just say to yourself, like, thank you for showing me, what I deserve, or, thank you for teaching me these lessons. And it's fascinating because like with acceptance, I think like you said, sometimes you're in acceptance, sometimes you're back in anger, and it's just always a process with grief. It's never just to like, oh, cool, I got through all the stages and now I'm perfect.
Right. Exactly. And like you said, there's no time limit on it. And acceptance, I think some people are might be under that impression where it's just like, okay, first I start with this one. And then I go to this one and and it can be this, like ping pong game where you're just like, denial, acceptance, no, anger. And just goes back and forth, where I think it kind of might look like where all of a sudden acceptance starts to become the longer phase down the, as you get closer to it. And, but I think it'll always, that grief will always be there no matter how long, maybe even time has gone by too. It just kind of gets a little bit easier to manage, to sit with. And, it's a hard process, but necessary. And I think a lot of really cool things come out of each stage if you look for it.
I agree. I think there's so much to be learned about yourself and life. I read the coolest quote this morning. It was time doesn't heal all wounds, love does. And I just thought, yes, that's so true. Because sometimes just time keeps going and you're still like, nope, this still hurts. And then you especially with romantic relationships, sometimes you just need to meet that person that you love again. And it's a different kind of a love and it just heals you. But, even if it isn't a romantic love, just we've all been given this chance to start over and to really live the life that we want. With so much taken away, it's created a vacuum for us to be like, okay, well, now that I have this moment to think, what do I want to do? What do I want to spend my time doing?
I don't know. Maybe we were out of touch prior to the pandemic. I don't know. Maybe I'm personally speaking, I guess.
Oh no, I think a lot of people were.
Just like you're just kind of going, and that's what I mean by out of touch. But where it's just like this constant buzz in your whole body, where you're just like at the end of the day, sometimes you're like, what happened today? I don't even remember. It was so crazy and maybe even unfulfilling most of the time. And now it's just like, I think that was the most uncomfortable part of this. And again, personally speaking, where I'm just like, ugh, whoa, hold on, I'm calming down now. And this whole experience of calming down, it was really uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. But again, like you said, I think I experienced the same thing where I'm like, okay, wait, what do I really want to do? Then all of these really cool ideas were coming up. I was getting excited about things and I'm like, okay, it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like we all were put in sort of like we were all put in a timeout. God was like, that's enough. You've done too much. Go sit, be quiet and think about what you've done. Like a timeout. And
I do. I feel like it was that. It was a timeout.
Oh, I do too. I do too. And I think you're right. Like we just had a moment to be like, oh gosh, I haven't been quiet in so long. I haven't actually sat and thought about anything other than what I needed to get done, which I think is driving all of us, just being busy and the hustle and the whole thing. And it's not that you can't hustle, but I think there has to be a balance, you've got to really balance.
Absolutely. Just being present, like where you are and just finding that balance, I think is so important. Like you said, there's nothing wrong with hustling. There's nothing wrong with being busy, but just going, okay, like be aware, just having that awareness in all the things that you do instead of just kind of like, I just did this because
like
the robot came to mind.
So and also, what you were saying too is just like you have the silence and then the ideas do come in. And that's when you can actually be talked to, whether you believe in a higher power or not. You can call it your subconscious if you want to, but it's like the inner you that hasn't been able to be heard for so long is just like, hey, we'd like to do this. Can we do this, please? And I'd like to believe that's like your higher self and God and the universe and the whole thing, just saying like, you weren't, and we've heard this for so long too, is like, you weren't put here to just work and work and work and be busy and busy and busy and like sort of just this string of errands that never ends. Like, that's not what we were put here to do. I mean, that's part of it.
I know, right?
We can't escape the errands. But, really, like, all of us, I think, if you were able to, got a chance to be like, what is my purpose?
Yeah.
And really
absolutely.
get clear on that. And hopefully, I think a lot of people did. I think people are still kind of figuring it out too. But I mean, I'm excited. I feel like there's a huge shift that's been happening. And
Me too.
So many people are just ready to be in this new world and ready to just live a life that's actually worth living instead of one that they feel trapped in and exhausted in and just wondering how to get out of, because now we've seen what it feels like to get a break and be like, okie dokie, you wanted a break. Here you go.
Right. Here you go. Yep. Exactly.
Also, with taking away any kind of control we thought we had this last year, it's really opened all of us up to going with the natural flow of our lives and taking those hints of, hey, why don't you try this? Or why don't you do this? And then saying, okay. And just taking a chance, just having that faith and seeing what happens. My God, like every time I did that last year, it just led to the next best thing. And it was, but I really think it's what we were talking about is just taking the noise away, taking all the other people's opinions or, always looking for that, like, help me feel better, validation. So you have to just be there with you.
Yeah.
And just be like, what am I supposed to do? And that's I'm not saying that's easy.
I know it is. It's
hard. But I think, going kind of like wrapping this up with grief, it's like grief will do that. It will knock you down. And you do get to that kind of rock bottom place where you're like, okay, I really don't have any power here. What do you want from me? Like, what do you want me to do? And that's
surrendering.
Yes. Yeah. That is such a beautiful place to come from, and your life can absolutely change. And the thing that you aren't prepared for is the way it's going to change. So again, it's like, again, with like the surrendering, you've just got to be like, okie doke, gonna do this and see what happens. Cause like, what's the worst that can happen? Like you go back to what you were doing before, if that's even an option.
Know? Yeah. I know.
So
I think, I think that's such an awesome point that you make. Just that whole thing. I think that's what a lot of people might be scared of. At least from what I've seen, who I've talked to and stuff, where it's just like, I mean, I think the anticipation of letting go is actually it's the worst thing compared to actually letting go and surrendering to what is out of your control. And it's, if you could just let it go just a little bit, I mean, it's so amazing, like what it can show you. And it actually always usually is positive things when you do kind of surrender and let go and listen and just sit in the quiet, sit in the uncomfortable. It's pretty amazing what comes from it.
And I think too, just, for someone listening who might be like, well, I mean, what does that entail? Like, how much letting go do you need me to do? Like, just like everything's gone. Like, I'm a monk now. Like, what do you want me to do? But I think it's more just like, when you're about to leave the house and you're like, gosh, maybe I should bring a sweater. Like the most simple of little like baby thoughts.
Yeah.
And then you don't bring the sweater. You're like, no, I'll be fine. And then you get there and you're freezing. Right?
Yeah.
It's that little tiny gut voice, right? Like that is your little higher self just being like, can we talk to you? And could we like give you some suggestions? And I think just maybe starting with those little tiny suggestions and feeling that you can trust that, and then it can lead to bigger suggestions. And then doing that step by step. So it's not just a whole like, okay, I just surrender to the universe and like, that's it. And because you kind of feel like you're free falling. Like no one wants to feel like they're free falling. Like they want to feel like we're taking the steps somewhere, taking one step at a time. So I would just suggest like that little tiny voice with the little tiny suggestions, just baby steps.
I love that idea so much. I think that's perfect. That's a perfect way to start, is those baby steps. And like you said, even from those baby steps, you kind of build the trust of listening to that, I don't know if we want to call it subconscious, whatever that might be, that voice.
Your gut.
And your gut. Absolutely. And just going, you know what? They're there for a reason.
Well, I feel like we can talk about everything, but
I know, same.
This was so lovely. You'll have to come on and we'll do another conversation about something magical as well. But I hope that we were able to help people kind of navigate through grief a little bit better and understand that it's not the end of the world, that it's just a process.